the economic organization of a P.O.W. camp. We often hear this opinion. Economics is based on analysis that makes perfect sense. The logic is self-consistent, and it sounds nearly flawless. But the thing is, the subjects of economic analysis are based on perfect market economies. Whenever I hear this point of view, I think of recommending an article to those who hold this belief. The article is very famous, titled The Economic Organization of a P.O.W. Camp, written by R.A. Radford, an economist who was captured during World War II and placed in a German prison camp. Welcome to the Economics Made Easy channel. Here, we break down economic principles in a simple and easy-to-understand way and show you how to apply these concepts in your everyday life. If you find this helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to get more practical economic insights right away. Today I'll explain just how useful economics really is. After the war, he wrote this article detailing the various economic phenomena, organizations, and interesting events that occurred in the camp. It's a fascinating read and really leaves a deep impression. A prisoner of war camp is obviously not a market economy, but how different are the events that unfold there, the behaviors people follow, compared to the outside world? Isn't the world inside the camp unique? 1. Where there are people, there is trade first. Radford explains that market activities in the P.O.W. camp developed rapidly. Initially, the prisoners were concerned for each other, caring and supporting one another. But they soon realized that love alone wasn't enough. They needed to develop market transactions to help each other. And only through these exchanges could they fairly obtain what they needed. Here's a key quote from Radford. In fact, a significant improvement in a prisoner's material well-being was not achieved through the ability to grab essentials for survival, but through the exchange of goods and services. At first glance, this may sound plain, but it contains an important truth. Even if the total amount of goods doesn't change, as long as people can trade with each other, happiness can emerge from nothing. There's a fascinating story of an inspiring moment in the camp. A chaplain had a jar of cheese and 5 cigarettes. He made a round through the camp and came back with a bag of food in his hands, but the cheese and cigarettes were unchanged. This chaplain wasn't a trickster. He was a merchant creating welfare and happiness. The bag of food was his proof of creating happiness. Of course, the camp's trade didn't develop overnight. There were 2 types of camps. One was a transit camp, where prisoners stayed only 3 to 5 days, and the other was a permanent camp, where prisoners lived for long periods and knew each other. In the transit camp, trade occurred but was sporadic, as prisoners didn't know each other well. The prices varied significantly depending on the transaction. In the permanent camp, however, as people got to know each other and traded more frequently, they developed platforms for trade, fixed locations, and even posted prices on a bulletin board. As a result, price discrepancies narrowed, and prices mainly reflected differences in time and quality. Not only did the prisoners exchange goods, but they also created a market for labor services. People started offering services like laundry, ironing, or even portrait painting. This reminds us of poverty-stricken areas today, where people often say the reason these areas haven't developed is due to a lack of investment or funds. However, the P.O.W. camp had no investment or funding. Yet as long as the system allowed and people had a bit of freedom, services emerged and the market developed. 2. Prices and price fluctuations in the camp. With a market comes prices, and with prices come price fluctuations. For example, the bread in the camp was provided by the Red Cross twice a week, on Monday and Thursday mornings. Each prisoner received 1 portion of bread. Once they had the bread, they would save it and eat it slowly, enough to last 3 or 4 days. Did the price of bread fluctuate? Absolutely. When did the price peak? The night before bread distribution, Sunday and Wednesday evenings, when most prisoners had already eaten their bread. During these times, the price of bread was at its highest, and anyone who saved their bread would earn a cigarette or two by the following morning. 3. Currency in the camp. Where there's trade, there's a need for currency. You might wonder, what kind of currency could there be in a POW camp? The answer, cigarettes. But how did the prisoners treat these cigarettes as currency? Just like any other currency, the bad money drives out good effect occurred. Some prisoners used low-quality cigarettes, which were re-rolled by hand with bits of hair mixed in, to make them thinner than machine-made cigarettes. These bad cigarettes were preferred for trading, driving the high-quality ones out of circulation. 4. Inflation and deflation in the camp. With currency in circulation, there was also inflation and deflation. When a nearby air raid occurred and bombs exploded near the camp, people became discouraged, thinking they could die at any moment. They began to wonder why they were hoarding cigarettes and ended up smoking more. The next morning, they discovered the camp was experiencing deflation. Goods that could have been sold for a certain price the day before were now worth less. On the flip side, there were also periods of inflation. One morning, rumors spread that the Red Cross was sending a large shipment of cigarettes, and the price of everything went up. For example, syrup, which usually sold for 2 cigarettes, jumped 4. By mid-morning, however, the rumor was debunked, and prices fell again, creating what economists would later call a bubble that popped. 5. Cross-border trade in the camp. You wouldn't think it possible, but there was even cross-border trade in the camp. British prisoners, who loved tea, would store up coffee, which the Germans preferred, and secretly trade it with people outside the camp for tea. This is an example of cross-border trade within the confines of the camp. 6. The household registration system in the camp. Even more interestingly, the POW camp had a household registration system. The Germans were relatively lenient with prisoners from European countries like France, Russia, Italy, and Yugoslavia, who were free to move between different barracks. But British and American prisoners were restricted in their movement. This system allowed some European prisoners more business opportunities. Of course, British and American prisoners could bribe their way around the restrictions, but this added complications and obstacles. 7. Public opinion pressure in the camp. One of the most fascinating things about the camp was the existence of public opinion pressure. Some prisoners believed that trading was immoral because it was often accompanied by deceit and fraud. They thought trading could corrupt people. Others believed trading with the Germans was wrong, calling it immoral. Some also argued that the frequency of trading was excessive. Some prisoners, in order to get cigarettes, sold all their food, damaging their own health and leading to hospitalization, which consumed more camp resources. This created negative externalities, and some people argued that such trading should be limited. There was also concern about price volatility. The price fluctuations were too high, and some believed the camp should have set a fixed price system. In fact, a price guideline was implemented for a while, but it couldn't hold when conditions changed dramatically. 8. Class discontent in the camp. There was a strong sense of class resentment in the camp. Many prisoners harbored hostility toward middlemen, whom they felt exploited the system for personal gain. Some middlemen had exclusive access to certain goods due to their ability to speak languages like Urdu, allowing them to trade with Indian and Pakistani prisoners. These middlemen kept their trading methods secret, and even Radford, the author, was unable to fully understand them. The prisoners resented these middlemen, but in reality, everyone benefited from their activities. Of course, when the U.S. infantry arrived on April 12, 1945, and the camp was liberated, the economic organizations collapsed as goods began to flood in, easing the scarcity. The system that had been so carefully designed and maintained quickly fell apart. Conclusion 1. Wherever there are people, there will be demand. 2. Whenever there are at least 2 people, their demands will differ, leading to trade. 3. Trade creates a need for currency, and with currency comes the phenomenon of bad money driving out good, as well as economic fluctuations such as inflation and deflation. 4. Trade creates information asymmetry, and with information asymmetry, middlemen arise. 5. Where there are people, there are emotions, public opinion, and externalities. The phenomena inside the camp mirrored what happens outside in the real world. So, if economics can explain the phenomena inside a P.O.W. camp, it can certainly explain the economic events in the world outside. How economics describes and explains the phenomena we face in our society is exactly what we'll explore in this series. I look forward to having you join the discussion.